The Suicide Monologues present the testimonies of people who have been affected by suicide and attempted suicide. The monologues are voiced by a range of actors. Please note that some viewers may find these films distressing.
Dear Catherine, I hope you don't mind me writing this letter. A bizarre set of events happened where I met someone at a party who knew you. Someone had been talking about a book in which a woman throws herself off a building in Sheffield and survives. Well, I put two and two together and I knew that it had to be you. The person at the party gave me your contact details, so I hope that you don't mind me writing to you, and I hope it's not too much of a shock. It was a delightful surprise to me to see how much you've done with your life and how you've reclaimed your experience by writing about it. You won't know this, but I was the first person on the scene. I tried to save you. I saw you falling from the building and instinctively I threw down my bag and I ran towards you. It's weird because it was the one and only time that I've ever parked at Rockingham Street car park. The day before, I'd had this pass that's normally reserved only for senior members of staff. I'm usually parking at Granville Road, and if that had been the case, I'd have taken my usual walk to work, and I would never have been part of this story. Your story. I tried to keep you breathing until the ambulance came, and I stroked your hair so that you would know that somebody was with you. Of course, you won't remember this. The police told me to prepare a report for coroner's court because the state that you were in, nobody expected you to survive. When the ambulance people took you away, after that, I didn't hear anything, so I assumed the worst. Well, Catherine, I suppose you really weren't meant to die. And things happen for a reason. When our two worlds collided that day, something profound happened to me too. I knew that I couldn't go back to my job as a clerical officer for the council. My calling was to be a nurse. So I worked really hard on a mature access course, and I got a place at university, but a life-changing incident happened soon after I started, and I nearly lost my life in a car accident. I had to postpone my course, and I thought that my career was over before it had even started. But I'm strong, like you, and I persevered, and I went back to my course and I graduated with a first-class honours degree. And you might find this difficult to believe, but that was you that inspired me. You taught me never to give up hope. I graduated in 2007 and I became a community nurse, and I love my job so much. So there it is. Things happen for a reason. When we were together in that moment, it was just a crease on the pages of our lives, and there were new chapters ahead in which we touched everybody from there on in. I never really understood about suicide before we shared the event together. I always thought that somebody trying to take their own life was weak. But when I saw you laying there on the concrete, still holding your bag, I knew you weren't weak. I realized that life sometimes throws us difficult things, and it can be too much for one person to bear. And I also realized how fragile life is and how we're all delicate. So, Catherine, I just wanted to say how proud I am of you, and I wanted to thank you for teaching me and for inspiring me. Your friend, James.
You were everywhere. He couldn't get away from you. He didn't stand a chance. We didn't stand a chance. Get £100 in bet credits. Bet £10, get £30 free. £30 bets and 100 free spins. Win a car, win a house, win a holiday. Win, 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 win. But that's not how the story goes. Not for anyone. You show no compassion or no remorse when people lose everything. Their homes, their families, their jobs, their lives. There's only one winner, and that's you. Matt was the boy that I loved, that grew into the man that I wanted to marry, the man I wanted to father my children. But that's before you got your claws into him, changed him, and stole him from me. He was a different person because of you. You turned him into an anxious person, a secretive person, a person with mood swings, and a person that I didn't even recognise. And then it all stopped, and it went silent. Apart from the scream that was. You know the type of scream that I mean. The scream of a mother losing her child. The scream that will echo in my ears for the rest of my life. The scream I heard as I fell to the floor as the police came to tell us that my lovely Matt had hung himself, all because of you. I'm going to tell you about my Matt, and you're going to listen to me. You owe me that much. He was a bit of a rebel at school. He used to fancy me, and I'd play hard to get, the usual boy-girl scenario. He used to run down the corridor and grab my bum, and I used to shout at him, and he would just laugh at me. But by college, he was being lured in by your promises, and he was nipping across to the bookies in his breaks. Matt was lovely. He was kind, hard-working, charming and funny. The life and soul of everybody. Everyone loved him. I loved him. And I loved him more than anything. But you made it harder and harder for him to love me back. I just had 2 years with him before you stole him from me and turned him into someone that I didn't know. Sometimes he'd leave me on my own in the casino with friends, just so that he could be with you and gamble on his phone behind my back, thinking that I wouldn't catch on. But I always did, and it led to no end of arguments. You had him firmly wrapped around your finger. You understood his mind and you knew how to manipulate him. You know what? You made him buzz. You made him buzz so much that he wanted to get closer and closer to you. And just as he did, you would slap him in the face. And you would leave him feeling down, depressed, angry and irritable. You controlled him like a puppet. And nothing that I could do or say could stop that. You forced him to keep secrets from me. You forced him to risk everything. I was at university working hard towards building our future together. You didn't consider me in any of this. You didn't care that I was working at a hospital with people who had catastrophic injuries. You didn't care that I was helping Matt whilst he was slipping further and further down that rabbit hole. I helped him get away from you for a while. Matt had counselling, and he thought he was doing better. But I knew different. And it wasn't long until you conned him back again. He suddenly had a big win. I only know this because I found his bank statement after his death. He lost it all, of course. I didn't get the text that he sent at 1 o'clock till 7 that morning. His parents never received the letter that he left on the kitchen table either. He just snuck away, as quiet as a mouse. He was determined to not come back. I just had 5 years with him before you took him from me. I'm gonna clip your wings. I'm gonna make you stop advertising. And I'm gonna make it so hard for you to do this to anyone else. And I'm gonna help other people whose lives you have torn apart. I am Nadine. I am 27 years old. And I am one of the founders of Gambling with Lives.
It was a Sunday, I remember that. But what I remember most about that day is the colour blue. Blue was the colour of her jacket, the jacket that she wore as she stepped in front of my train. It's been a long time since I've been down here to the station. I'm not a train driver anymore. It's affected me badly, you see. It haunts me even though it was 9.5 years ago. Just standing here makes me realise how little I'd been prepared for the impact of witnessing that event was going to have on me. I'll tell you what happened, shall I, now that I can talk about it. After releasing the brakes and opening the throttle, we pulled away from the platform. I guided the train through the countryside under the fading light of evening. I had to concentrate hard on the line ahead as my eyes adjusted to the fading light. Once you reached 70 miles an hour, I closed the throttle and we maintained a good speed towards the next stop. I remember passing over a level crossing. We passed a whistle board. That's a white round sign with a black W which commands a driver to sound the horn, which I did. Just as I'd done that, she stepped out into the path of my train. I knew it was a woman. She held her arms out, you know, a bit like a goalkeeper trying to block the path of an opponent. I lurched forward and I grabbed the brake controller and I pushed it into emergency. The train's coupler slammed into her upper body. It threw her down the embankment. I heard a sickening thud even before I'd fully applied the brakes. She not only bounced off the train, it was like she bounced off me too. I jumped into action. I followed all the correct procedures that I've been trained to follow. I contacted the police, I contacted my control room, and I did all the other things to make the scene safe. I remember my mind being filled with emergency drills, checklists that needed completing, but I felt nothing, not at the time anyway. It was like I'd disconnected. My instinct was to rush to her aid and try and administer some sort of medical assistance. I felt responsible for her. I wanted to bandage her up, to help her. But it was obvious that no one would have survived an impact like that. I remember wanting to run as fast as I could, anywhere just to get away from it. I felt guilty, like this was my fault. When I got home, I climbed under the duvet and I kept on replaying the events over and over in my mind like a stuck record. I thought about the police knocking on the door of the woman's family to give them the news. I didn't have feelings, I just felt numb. Everyone helped to pick me up, but then after a few days the trauma started to set in. I started to slip into a deep depression over the next few weeks. My home felt dark and I couldn't sleep. I stopped answering the phone and answering the door, and I stopped going to work. I shaved my head because I wanted to rid myself of everything that I had on me when the incident happened. 6 months I waited for counselling. I went through a myriad of feelings, from guilt to anger and despair. And then I felt deep concern for the family of the deceased. At the coroner's inquest, I was questioned extensively. The deceased family were also present. I saw her son in the corridor. He said, "I wanted to apologise to you on behalf of my mother. She should never have put you through this ordeal." I shook his hand and tried to reassure him that his pain was greater than mine. I felt a bizarre connection to this stranger. I never knew her before, yet it's someone who I have shared the most vulnerable time in her life, but where I feel connection, he feels abandonment. Where my wounds and pain will fade over time, his will never diminish. It took me a full 6 years to cry for the deceased, Mary, and also for the trauma that I suffered.
I'm 11. I sit at the front of the bus with my friend. I tell her how I'm scared that one day I'll kill myself. I tell her I think it's my destiny. I tell her that my grandma took her own life and that my mum's always trying to take hers too. This is what I carry around with me. This is my burden. The burden I've inherited of a future I'm scared of. I know you struggled, Mum. Your mum struggled too, but you missed her. Our childhood was hard. You were angry. I don't think you ever felt ready to be a mum. You blamed your parents. Most of all, you blamed yourself. I don't blame you. You were my best friend, and I love you. I miss you. I miss you so much. And I never hated you, not really. And that's what hurts the most. If I didn't care, then you wouldn't be this hole in my heart that I carry around with me every day. I'm 17, and I find myself in my kitchen surrounded by these men in black uniforms. You've gone missing again. You've decided that you're going to die. Hypothermia this time is your death of choice. I've got to admit it's new and imaginative. So I'm in the kitchen and I'm on the phone to you. The police and mountain rescue are all here with me. It's quite the turnout. They can track your phone, but they can't find you. You'll only listen to me, no one else. I tell you that I want to come and find you. I beg you to tell me where you are. I promise I won't tell anyone, but I'm lying. So you tell me and I tell them, they find you, and you're sectioned again. You're angry with me. I walk into that familiar room where people are dying. You're there. Tubes and machines everywhere. I'm used to this. Snapshots hit me like a jolt. I hid them in my mind, but occasionally the trapdoor opens and out comes a painful memory which I can't stop. There's nothing I can do. A letter arrives. I have the worst attendance at school, but no one bothers to think why. I'm guilty. I'm to blame. I disgust myself. I'm skinny, but I feel fat and ugly. I drink laxatives every morning. I hate myself. I'm hated. Teachers tell me I'm a bad student. I tell them to fuck off. I'm underweight. I've not slept in months. I'm popping pills in between classes just to cope. Nobody asks me if I'm okay. No one helps. I skip school, but no one seems to care. I go home and you tell me that you're going to kill yourself, just like you said to me last night. I spend the night in your bed, not sleeping, watching you, trying to keep you alive. I wake the next morning exhausted that I couldn't give a shit about school. I have to try to keep you alive. But I failed. I failed. Every day, I carry you with me like a hole in my heart. I miss you, Mum.
Yeah, she came in last night. Overdose again. She's a regular. Yeah, I don't know why mental health services aren't caring for these people better. Well, we get them all in here. Oh, do you want sugar with your coffee? I know what some of you young nurses are like, wanting to be healthy. I mean, now this might sound a bit harsh, but I think some of these people are a bit attention seeking. Oh, you'll understand what I mean when you've been here for as long as I have. You know, sometimes I think to myself that one day she'll come in here and she won't leave. And it's hard to know what to say to them sometimes, don't you think? I mean, we don't seem to have enough training on it. And it kind of goes against everything we're trying to do here, doesn't it? You know, preserving life when they're trying to end theirs. Yeah, they all end up back in here. You'd think with these people that they'd be in a psychiatric hospital, wouldn't you? You know, somewhere safe. Somewhere where people can keep an eye on them, give them the proper support. No, it doesn't make sense to me. Don't get me wrong. You know I'm always professional in my care with these people, aren't I? It's just, well, I suppose I've become a bit cynical like you do after 30 years. I mean, we all get low. Well, I know I do. And I get stressed. I mean, it's bloody hard working 40-hour week, especially on A&E, and it's non-stop, as you know, from the minute we get in here to the minute we leave, and it's no easier when I get home. What with the kids? And caring for my disabled husband who's just lost his job. We're up to our eyes in debt. Oh, I have dark thoughts, all right. But I'd never do that. I mean, there's other people to think about, aren't there? Would you? Oh, look at the time. We best be getting back. It's madness out there. You done with your cup?
He passed away 6 years ago now. I thought I would never be able to function again, even at a most basic level. Life is bearable now, but it would be an exaggeration to say it was anything more than that. When Harry first told me he was going to end his life before the illness became too unbearable for him and for me, I was against the decision. Pancreatic cancer, for the record, a virulent disease. But despite the illness, there was a determination in him that he was going to do it, and no intervention from me would or could have stopped him. So in the end, I went along with him. I didn't want to be the cause of conflict in those last few precious months and weeks. When the time came for him to take the cocktail of drugs that would end his life, he was still recognisably my Harry, and not some barely conscious skeleton. He didn't want to spend weeks lying unconscious with me and his friends watching him die. And although I knew he was leaving me forever, those last few moments could not have been sweeter or more tender. See, I guess I was greedy. at first, considering my own needs and not understanding what was best for him. I wanted him with me, whatever condition he was in. But Harry, in his own inimitable way, was protecting me, as well as ending his life for his own sake. And he explained this to me. I understood. There was no going back. I accepted that. I didn't want to amplify his anguish. We lay on the bed. He drank his drink. I held him close. And he died. See, the world seemed to work with Harry. I began to understand people and their motivations. Being a gay man lost its sense of shame. We only had 10 years together, but in those 10 years we found a depth of love that some people don't find in 50. Life is cruel. And he fell victim to an illness we all dread. But what a man he was. Wrenching control of it and dying on his terms, where and when he wanted to. Harry Croft, forever in my heart. I love you always. There'll never be another you.
I'm knitting this blanket. 400 stitches wide it'll be. I've agreed not to kill myself until I've finished it. I'm not afraid of dying, but I am afraid of the legacy my suicide would leave behind for the people I love. My husband, my sister, my mum, my gran, aunties, uncles, cousins, my best friend, even my therapist. I also worry about my wider friendship circle. I know it sounds odd, but I even worry about the 200 people who follow me on Twitter. I worry that one day I'll stop worrying about the impact my death will have. And when that day comes, I shall be free to jump. Too afraid to live, too brave to die. That's what I wrote in my notebook last night. I don't feel very brave. I don't want to exist. I want to stop breathing. I just want to fade away, but I don't want to kill myself, not really. But ending my own life seems the only solution that holds any hope for me right now. As long as I keep knitting my blanket, all will be okay. I have these measures which stop me from ending it all. So if I'm standing at the tube station, I make sure I stand with my back firmly pressed against the wall, well away from the platform edge until the train has stopped. If my husband hands me a packet of painkillers, I take one strip and then I ask him to store the rest at work. I devise delaying tactics and I make bargains with myself to buy me extra time. I mostly stay silent about my inner turmoil, those suicidal thoughts. Ideation, as a psychiatrist once put it. I don't think that you'd know I'm suicidal. I'm kind of halfway in between this life, halfway in between the next. I'm not really present in either. I call it the grinning madness. I live in fear of someone saying, "Are you okay?" I'm convinced that I'm going to fall apart at the seams. But my silence is cast iron, it's self-imposed, and I don't consider breaking it, even for a moment. I was walking across a bridge a few months ago, and I stopped. I stopped to look at the inky black waters beneath. My rucksack was heavy with my laptop and other belongings, and I just wanted to slip into the inviting darkness. Disappear with barely a ripple. My rucksack was heavy. It would have pulled me to the riverbed, but I didn't do it. I didn't do it because I was worried. I was worried that someone would stop me, save me, and then I'd live. I have a river of tears inside me. A volcano that's about to erupt. A dam that's about to burst its banks, but I feel dead inside. There's almost no point in me killing myself because something was murdered in me so long ago. As long as I keep knitting my blanket, All will be okay.
I've worked as a mental health nurse for 25 years. In that time, only one patient has chosen to end their life. Bob was his name. Bob had depression and work-related stress. He never talked about hurting himself to his GP or anyone, so it came as a shock. I knew he was in a bit of a tangle, feeling stuck with his life, but I didn't expect him to end it like that. It wasn't as if he had to wait for an appointment like some people. We managed to get him in on a cancellation to see someone straight away. He was a proud man, was Bob. He had a strong work ethic. Work was a big part of who he was. His colleagues had either been made redundant or were off sick, so he was left holding the fort on his own and feeling the pressure. His presentation wasn't particularly unusual or extreme. I'm not suicidal, Bob said to me on his first appointment. I can never do that to those who love me. Well, I viewed that to be a protective factor, on a scale of risk we use to assess when we see patients. No obvious signs were there to my mind. The risks were low. Bob wanted to see me again, and I was able to fit him in the following week by extending me a lunch break. He attended as he said he would, and I listened and I learned. We talked about how he might begin to move forward to reduce his stress. Bob, he agreed to see me again the following week. That would have been his third appointment, but he didn't show up. Bob had hung himself. I was shocked, deeply saddened and in disbelief. This singular experience still makes me question myself, question mine and the service's response, question my assessment, question the care I offered, and question the decisions I made. I made a conscious effort to speak to his GP following his death. I wanted to find out everything I could about the referral to him prior to his referral to myself. All too often, professionals can retreat into defensive silos following the death of a patient. I'm sure you've had many a patient end their life in your career, the GP said. I hadn't. On reflection, as professionals, we all felt we'd done as much as we could. I was asked to write a report for the coroner's inquest. I waited to be called to give evidence, but never heard anything other than an inquest. A verdict, sorry. I felt as if I'd been denied my own personal opportunity to find personal closure. I do wonder, looking back, had he seen someone from the community mental health team, like a psychiatrist, he might have had a better chance. Thing was, he didn't tick all the right boxes because he was considered to be low risk. Plus, he would have had to wait ages to see someone. I feel a mixture of anger and guilt. He had so much to live for, but I can't help wondering if I've missed something and I'm somehow to blame. I feel really, really frustrated. When things like this happen, there's usually an explanation. In this case, there wasn't. None of this made sense.
What do you expect me to feel after what you've done? I don't know what to think or feel anymore. I feel nothing. I'm numb. I am Olivia. I'm an only child. I'm 14 years old. I'm a child to a single parent. I am someone you didn't want. I feel like an orphan, but I'm not because you're still here. You're still lying in that bed,
still broken and damaged. They came to my school, you know, tried to soften the blow by telling me you'd had an accident and had been hit by a tram. I knew you hadn't, because Laura's mum, who works on A&E, had already texted her while we were in geography class, so she knew before me that you'd thrown yourself under a tram willingly. I came to the hospital to see you and you'd blown up like a balloon. I didn't even recognise you. Didn't know who you were. They told me that you wouldn't know I was there, but I spoke to you anyway and you squeezed my hand. They told me to prepare for the worst and that you probably weren't going to make it through the night. My life fell apart there and then. I fell on the floor and screamed, willing for all the pain to come out of me, but it didn't. It never will. I hate you for this. I hate you. I want you to feel the pain that I feel inside. But I know you're hurting too. I love you, Dad. Please don't die. I want to run away. I want a new life. I don't want everyone to know that I am the child whose only parent tried to leave them. Gran has moved in, I can't stand it. She's moved everything around as if you're already dead. She doesn't want to be here. I don't want her to be here. I want you here, not her. I want to lie in your bed and soak up your smell, but she won't let me. So I lock myself up in my room. School have shoved me in learning base. They say that I'm a distraction and that I'm better off in a more supportive environment. I hate it there, and I hate it here, and I hate you for doing this. At night I stay out and get so drunk that it melts away all the pain I feel inside, only for it to come back the next day and for the nightmare to start all over again. I hate you. And I love you. I am 14 years old and you tried to leave me alone in the world.
It was 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning when the policeman knocked at the door. It didn't occur to me that he was there for a personal reason. I just thought he was making inquiries about someone else's crime, someone else's tragedy. And then he said, "Are you Rosie's mum?" "Is she dead?" I asked him, but I already knew. He said she'd hung herself in the night, in the flat that she shared with her daughter and a boyfriend. It wasn't the first time she'd tried to take her own life. On her 18th birthday, she took an overdose. First of many. It felt like I was on a roller coaster for the last few years of her life. always on the edge, always dealing with her many crises. When she was in a good place, happy, we got on so well. She made us all laugh. She was funny, entertaining, and she was stylish. She was intelligent and interesting, but when she was in a dark place, she wasn't funny or intelligent or interesting. She drank, she took drugs, she stopped eating. They diagnosed her with a condition called borderline personality disorder. It's like something's not wired properly in your brain. She wanted to die for so long, but you never would have guessed. People like my Rosie, they don't always look sad. She looked like a happy young woman who had everything to live for. Losing someone is hard, but losing someone to suicide is harder. The suddenness, you've no time to say goodbye. And the guilt. Could I have done more to stop her? How did I let my daughter kill herself? It helps to think that this is what she wanted, that it was her choice to die. She wasn't taken away by an accident or an illness. She left of her own accord on the 10th of September. That's World Suicide Prevention Day. Surely that's not a coincidence. I wonder, I think maybe it was her last little joke. I dread people asking me if I've got children, about my family. I dread their reaction if I have to say that I had a daughter but she died. It doesn't get easier with time. I don't know what words to use. Taken her own life, killed herself, committed suicide. How did I let that happen to the daughter I loved? These days, I help to look after her daughter, my granddaughter. She looks just like her mum. She has brought me so much joy. I don't know how I'd have got through this without her. But I worry about how she'll be affected. She doesn't really remember Rosie. I have all the memories. You never stop being someone's mum.
It's a regular occurrence for us as trauma surgeons to deal with failed suicide attempts. Males often choose the more violent methods. That's why they're brought to us here in the musculoskeletal department. That's what we're here for. Recently, an elderly gentleman was brought into A&E. He was about 76 years old and he had throat cancer. His quality of life was very poor. He couldn't sleep or eat and was rapidly losing weight and was in constant pain. Somehow he had managed to fire a crossbow bolt into his mouth. He wanted to kill the cancer. He wanted to kill himself. It was a shocking sight. It was a miracle that he was still alive. The only way he could communicate with us was by blinking. Now, thankfully, his daughter was there, and she was able to verify that he didn't have any mental health issues and that he had full mental capacity to make the decision that he didn't want us to remove that bolt. In that half an hour, I had to appraise the situation, and it was very clear that he did not want us to save his life. I remember when I explained to him that I wasn't going to try and remove it, that's when he noticeably relaxed. It goes against everything. Our ethos of preserving life at all costs. It's instinctive to try and save someone, to make them better. That's what my training taught me. That's what my life has been about. He just wanted to go. He just wanted to die. I don't think the decision would have been quite so easy if his daughter wouldn't have been there. That was reassuring. It's one of those things you can never be prepared for. So we got him a bed on palliative care, and 4 days later he died. We respected his wishes. And he was fairly easy to manage, but the horror of confronting that situation was devastating, awful. It was the most harrowing day on call for me. The registrar and I talked about it. We sat up, talked about it all night. We don't ordinarily do that. And when I came home, I couldn't eat or sleep for days. I needed to talk to someone, offload to my wife. Again, that's not something I would normally do. It's one of those cases that will stay with me forever. It was an extraordinary thing to witness.
My mum died because she was ill. That's what I said at her funeral. I don't know why she became ill, but I know it was the depression that killed her. It wasn't quick, like a heart attack or a stroke. It descended upon her like a cancer, engulfing her, tormenting her for years. It made her life unbearable. Of course, there were times when things were brighter. There often is with mental illness. Times when she didn't look scared. Times she could relax. Precious times. She knew how much we loved her, I know that much. Yet she struggled with the shame and the guilt for all the chaos and pain her illness caused throughout our lives. I don't know why it was that particular Saturday she brought herself here to Redmeyer's Dam. And I don't know what she must have been thinking to herself as she stood at the water's edge. I don't know what went through her mind as she took her last breath. and gave herself up to the icy water. I don't know much at all. Can't find the words to explain. Scared that I never will. My mum died because she was ill. That's what I said at her funeral. She was fully clothed in the water when they found her, yet they never found her bag or her shoes. On the first anniversary of Mum's death, I came here to leave some flowers, but it had been drained. I just wanted to climb over the wall and run out into the mud and try and find her bag and her shoes, but what would that have achieved? She will remain a secret. And soon the water would return, and like other secrets, hers will remain hidden under the calm, dark surface for all eternity. Dad and I sat on the sofa as 3 police officers came into the room. We knew instinctively what the news was, but they still have to tell you. They have to say it out loud for you to hear, for your brain to register, for your heart to crack, for your throat to let out that noise. It's been 13 years since Mum drowned. Despite all the years of mental illness, the depression, schizophrenia, spells in hospital, the previous suicide attempts, her actual death was recorded as an open verdict, not a suicide. Ironically, Mum was a swimmer, just like me. Counting the laps and the strokes allows me to empty my head. Yet in a macabre way, it makes me think about drowning. When I accidentally swallow a mouthful of water, I instinctively cough it back up and pull up for breath. And in that moment, I wonder what it must take to fight that natural impulse to survive. To not keep going. To not keep breathing. Then I carry on swimming. My mum died because she was ill. That's what I said at her funeral.
I lied a lot about what had happened to me in the beginning. It's hard to know what to say to people. It's not like saying I've been in a car accident or I've had cancer. Hi, I'm Catherine, I'm a suicide survivor. People just don't know how to respond to that. They're embarrassed mostly. It's not normal really, is it, suicide? Well, you think it's not normal until you actually find out that 84 people every single week in the UK complete suicide. That's fairly normal, isn't it? My suicide attempt 16 years ago didn't just happen to me though. It happened to everybody I knew, and it happened to loads of people that I didn't know as well. Incidents like that never happen in isolation, and they touch many, many people in the community. I guess it was hard for me to take on board everybody's feelings and thoughts about what had happened to me in the beginning. People were angry and people were upset. I just had enough of a job trying to process what had happened to me, never mind think about everybody else's feelings and thoughts. I was struggling just to get from one end of the room to the other in one piece. That 3-second act of standing on top of that building and letting myself fall seems to have defined who I am to loads of people. I'm no longer Catherine, that amazing person who was a social worker, that had a child on my own and managed to get a degree and buy my own house. To some people, I'm that mad woman, that nutter, that mental case, that selfish person, that woman who jumped off a building. People ask me, do I regret what happened? Well, it's a bit more complicated than saying yes. Of course I regret the hurt and the pain that it's caused a lot of people. And of course I regret having to live with this amount of pain every single day. And of course I regret spending so much of the NHS money putting me back together again. But to answer yes is an admission that somehow I was responsible for what actually happened to me, that I chose it almost. Nobody chooses to end their own life. People are pushed into it. People are pushed into it because their stress has outstripped their ability to cope. People are pushed into it because they're mentally ill, or they're really sad or lonely or massively in debt. People don't choose to end their life. Choice is a really difficult word to use. How it looks on the inside is completely different to how it looks on the outside. Choice is the only word that we have. I don't lie about what happened to me anymore. I own my story. This is my story. I like who I am now. It's been a hard story. It's been a hard journey. But it's my journey. And my journey and my story have taught me that there is always hope. There is always hope. I have to talk about this to stop the discrimination towards people like me. That's why I wanted to make this film. That's why it's important to me. I want people to talk about suicide. I want people to be open. That way we might be able to stop it happening to so many people. I am a mother. I am a grandma. I am a partner. I am a friend. I am an employee. I am a disability advocate. I'm a gardener. I'm a writer. I'm a theatre maker. I'm a businesswoman. I'm a survivor. I am a suicide survivor. I am Catherine.